This is who they sent us. Captain Derek Hayes stood with his hands on his hips, staring at the old man who had just walked into the maintenance hangar. His voice carried across the vast space, loud enough for everyone to hear the skepticism dripping from every word. The maintenance facility was massive, large enough to house 3 M1 Abrams tanks side by side. Right now, only one occupied the space, and it had been sitting there, silent and broken, for 72 hours. Robert Morgan, 79 years old, paid no attention to the captain's tone. He carried a weathered canvas bag over one shoulder, the kind that looked like it had survived a war, maybe more than one. His clothes were simple, work boots that had seen better decades, denim pants worn soft at the knees, a red and black flannel shirt that wouldn't look out of place at a hardware store. Nothing about him screamed military expert. Hayes walked closer, his fresh uniform crisp in contrast to Robert's worn appearance. The captain was young, maybe 30, West Point graduate, 3 years of active duty. He believed in data, algorithms, and the superiority of modern technology. "Sir, can I see some identification?" Hayes asked, his tone suggesting he already doubted whatever would be shown. Robert slowly reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He handed over a laminated base access card. Hayes glanced at it. "Visitor pass." "Right," he handed it back. "And you're here because General called me," Robert said simply. His voice was quiet but steady, like the low rumble of an engine at idle. Hayes let out a short laugh. "General Harrison called you." He looked around at his team of engineers, all of them watching this exchange with tired, frustrated eyes. "We've had a dozen specialists here, engineers from the manufacturer, reps from the contractor, and now he sends you." Robert didn't respond. He was already looking past Hayes, his eyes fixed on the Abrams tank sitting under the harsh LED work lights. The tank looked fine from the outside. 70 tons of American armor, its 20mm gun pointed harmlessly at the far wall. But appearances were deceiving. For 3 days, the best minds in the division had tried to fix what was broken. The turret traverse system had a phantom problem. It moved, but not smoothly. It groaned, stuttered, hesitated. Every computer diagnostic said the system was fine. Every sensor reading came back normal. But the tank crew knew better. They could feel it, hear it. Something was wrong deep in the mechanical heart of the beast. And no one could find. "We've been running diagnostics non-stop," Hayes continued, gesturing at the laptops and diagnostic equipment surrounding the tank. "Pressure tests, hydraulic flow analysis, electronic system checks. Everything comes back clean. But the problem persists." He crossed his arms. "So forgive me if I'm skeptical that someone with..." He paused, looking Robert up and down again. "Your background is going to solve what a team of engineers couldn't." Robert set his canvas bag down on the concrete floor. The sound echoed in the quiet hangar. He knelt slowly, his joints protesting the movement, and began unrolling the bag. Inside were tools, not the kind you'd find in a modern repair facility. These were old, hand tools with wooden handles worn smooth by decades of use. Wrenches with patina, hammers with replaced handles, a collection that looked like it belonged in a museum. Hayes stared at them. Then he laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "You have got to be kidding me." He turned to his lead engineer, a staff sergeant named Colin. "We've got millions of dollars in diagnostic equipment and he shows up with Grandpa's toolbox?" Several of the younger soldiers chuckled. The humor of exhaustion and frustration, finding an easy target. Robert didn't react. He selected a long steel rod, something that looked almost like a stethoscope for machines. He stood and walked toward the tank. "Sir, I need you to step back from the vehicle," Hayes said sharply. "That's sensitive military equipment. Not a car you're fixing in your driveway." Robert ignored him. He placed his hand flat on the turret ring, eyes closed, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Hayes's patience snapped. "I said step back." Master Sergeant Collins shifted uncomfortably. He'd seen the paperwork. General Harrison himself had authorized this visit. That meant something. The general didn't waste time on jokes. But Captain Hayes was his commanding officer, and right now Hayes looked like he was ready to have the old man physically removed. Robert opened his eyes. He knelt beside the tank, placing his ear against the cold metal hull. He tapped the steel rod gently. Once, Twice. 3 times. Listening. The image was almost comical. An elderly man in flannel, crouched beside a modern war machine, using techniques from another era. That's it, Hayes snapped. Collins, call security. Get this man off my floor before he damages something. Collins hesitated. Just for a second. Sir, General Harrison personally authorized. I don't care if the president authorized it. I'm in charge of this repair, and I'm not letting some random civilian touch a multi-million-dollar tank with rusty tools. Hayes pulled out his radio. Security. This is Captain Hayes in Hangar 4. I need an escort to remove a civilian from a restricted area. As he spoke, Robert reached back into his tool roll. His hand closed around something. He pulled it out slowly. It was a wrench, but not like any wrench the engineers had seen before. The handle was wrapped in electrical tape. The head had been modified, ground down on one side, welded on another. It looked like someone had taken 3 different tools and Frankensteined them together in a field workshop. It was ugly, brutal, completely non-standard. Hayes saw it and actually laughed out loud. What the hell is that? Did you make that yourself? For the first time, Robert's calm expression flickered. He looked down at the wrench in his hand, and the maintenance hangar disappeared. He was back in the desert. Kuwait, 1991. The sky was orange with oil fires. The ground shook with distant explosions. His tank, bad company, had taken a hit. Not penetrating, but enough to jam the turret traverse. They were sitting ducks. The standard tools didn't fit. The angle was impossible. They had minutes, maybe less, before enemy armor found them. So he'd grabbed a piece of metal from a destroyed Iraqi vehicle, used a field torch, hammered it, shaped it, created this ugly, beautiful tool. It had saved his crew that day. The wrench wasn't just metal. It was survival, improvisation, the kind of thinking that kept you alive when the textbook solutions failed. He blinked. Back in the present. The young captain was still smirking at him. The engineers were watching with a mixture of pity and amusement. Yeah, Robert said quietly. I made it. In your garage? Hayes asked mockingly. In a war, Robert replied. The words hung in the air. Quiet, but with a weight that made a few of the soldiers stop smiling. Hayes recovered quickly. Well, that's very impressive, sir. But we're dealing with modern hydraulic system, not something you can fix by hitting it with a homemade hammer. He keyed his radio again. Security. Where's that escort? Master Sergeant Collins made a decision. He'd been in the Army for 18 years. Long enough to know when an officer was making a mistake, and Captain Hayes was about to make a career-ending one. He pulled out his cell phone, turned away from Hayes, scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for General Harrison's office. The phone rang twice. General Harrison's office. Major Peterson speaking. Major, this is Master Sergeant Collins, in Hangar 4. His voice was low but urgent. We have a situation. The specialist General Harrison sent, Captain Hayes, is having him removed by security. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then, say that again. Captain Hayes doesn't believe the civilian specialist is qualified. He's calling base security to escort him out. Jesus Christ. The major's voice went from professional to alarmed in an instant. Does Hayes know who that man is? I don't think so, sir. Keep that man there. Do not let him leave. We're coming now. The line went dead. Collins pocketed his phone. Across the hangar, 2 security officers had just arrived. Young MPs with sidearms and uncertain expressions. Hayes pointed at Robert. Gentlemen, please escort this man from the facility. He's interfering with a critical repair operation. Robert didn't argue. He simply began packing his tools. Slowly, methodically. Each piece placed carefully back into its slot in the canvas roll. Hayes turned back to his engineering team, satisfied. All right, people. Back to work. Let's run the diagnostic suite one more time. The problem is in the software. It has to be. He just sealed his fate. Across the base, in a building marked Division Command, General Harrison was already moving. He'd been a soldier for 32 years. He'd commanded troops in 3 wars, and he did not tolerate disrespect, especially not toward men who'd earned it through blood and steel. Get me everything on Master Gunner Robert Morgan. He barked at Major Peterson. Full service record. And I want the car ready in 90 seconds. The major was already pulling files from the secure database. Sir, Morgan's file is extensive. silver star for action during Desert Storm. 2 bronze stars, 15 confirmed tank kills in 7. Creator of the Morgan method for field hydraulics repair, which is still taught at Fort Benning. Battalion nicknamed him the Fixer, because he could diagnose a mechanical problem just by listening to it. Harrison finished. I know. I served with him. That kid out there just insulted a living legend. He grabbed his cover and strode toward the door. Let's go remind him what respect looks like. The command vehicle was already running. 2 Humvees fell in behind it as the small convoy tore across the base toward Hangar 4. Inside, Captain Hayes was about to learn a very expensive lesson about humility. The sound came first. The high-pitched squeal of tires on asphalt, then the rumble of heavy engines. Every head in the hangar turned toward the open bay doors. A black SUV with 2-star plates screeched to a halt just outside. Before it had fully stopped, the passenger door flew open. General William Harrison stepped out. He was a tall man, lean and hard, 58 years old, with gray at his temples and eyes that could cut through steel. He didn't walk, he strode, boots hitting the concrete like hammer strikes. Behind him came Major Peterson and the base sergeant major, 3 men radiating authority and barely controlled anger. Attention, someone shouted. The entire hangar snapped to attention. Tools dropped. Conversations stopped. Even the MPs straightened up. Captain Hayes felt his stomach drop. The general wasn't supposed to be here. This was a routine maintenance issue. Why was division command involved? But Harrison didn't even look at him. His eyes swept the hangar until they found what they were looking for. Robert Morgan, standing near his tool bag, calm, waiting. The general walked straight to him, covering the distance in long, purposeful strides. He stopped 3 feet away. And then, in front of everyone, General William Harrison came to attention and rendered the sharpest salute of his career. Master Gunner Morgan. His voice boomed, filling the entire space. It's an honor to have you here, sir. The hangar went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the concrete floor. Robert, slowly, returned the salute. His movements stiff with age, but precise. Professional. Hayes felt the blood drain from his face. Master Gunner. The old man in flannel was a master gunner. Harrison held the salute for a long moment, then dropped it. But he didn't turn around yet. He kept his eyes on Robert. I apologize for the reception you received, Gunner. That's on me. I should have briefed my people properly. No harm done, General, Robert said quietly. Now Harrison turned. His gaze swept across the assembled engineers and technicians before settling on Captain Hayes. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Captain Hayes. Front and center. Hayes's legs felt like lead, but he forced himself forward, stopped in front of the general, came to attention. Sir. Harrison's voice was low. Dangerous. Would you like to explain to me why you just tried to have a decorated combat veteran removed from this facility? Sir. I didn't know. You didn't know. Harrison's words were clipped, each one landing like a physical blow. Let me educate you, Captain. He pulled a folder from Major Peterson, opened it. Robert Morgan, Master Gunner, 30 years of service, 3 combat tours, Silver Star for valor during Operation Desert Storm, when his crew held off an enemy armor column for 6 hours after their communication systems were destroyed. Hayes felt sick. 2 bronze stars, 15 confirmed kills against enemy armor. More importantly, Captain, this man wrote half the field maintenance manual you people are supposed to be following. Harrison took a step closer. The manufacturer consults him when they have a problem they can't solve. Fort Benning brings him in to teach advanced course, and you, he paused. You called security on him. The rebuke was total, public, devastating. Harrison turned to address the entire hangar. For those of you who don't know, Master Gunner Morgan's battalion called him the Fixer. Not because he was good with tools, but because he could diagnose problems that computers couldn't see. He thinks like the machine, feels it. He gestured at the banks of laptops and diagnostic equipment. You've been staring at screens for 3 days, running the same tests over and over, getting the same results. Maybe it's time to try something different. He looked at Robert. Gunner, if you're still willing, I'd appreciate your assessment of our problem. Robert nodded once. Be happy to, General. The entire hangar watched in silence as Robert approached the tank again. This time, no one tried to stop him. He moved slowly, not with the hesitation of age, but with the deliberation of a master craftsman. Every movement had purpose. He placed both hands on the turret ring, closed his eyes, stood there for almost 30 seconds without move. Captain Hayes, standing off to the side with his career crumbling around him, couldn't understand what the old man was doing. He looked like he was meditating, or praying. "Start the auxiliary power unit," Robert said, his voice quiet but clear. An engineer looked at General Harrison. The general nodded. The APU whined to life. The tank's systems powered up, lights flickering on the control panels. "Now traverse the turret. Slowly. Left to right." The command was relayed. Inside the tank, an operator engaged the controls. The familiar sickening groan filled the hangar. The turret moved, but it stuttered, jerked, like an old man's arthritic joint. Robert kept his hands on the metal, eyes still closed, listening. After 10 seconds, "Stop." The turret stopped. "Traverse right." Same speed. Again the groaning, the hesitation. Robert's head tilted slightly, like he was picking up a frequency no one else could hear. "Stop." Shut down the APU. The tank went quiet. Robert opened his eyes. He knelt down beside the turret ring, his joints protesting, but he ignored the discomfort, reached into his tool roll and pulled out that ugly modified wrench. The engineers craned their necks, trying to see what he was doing. Master Sergeant Collins moved closer, genuinely curious now. Robert's hands disappeared into a gap in the turret assembly, a space barely wide enough for his arm. He was working blind, by feel alone. His face showed concentration, decades of muscle memory guiding his movements. "Your problem isn't in the hydraulics," he said, his voice slightly strained from the awkward position. "It's not in the electronics either. Your diagnostics are looking at the wrong." Hayes, despite everything, found himself listening. "Then what is it?" "Mechanical linkage between the hydraulic actuator and the ring gear. There's a tension bolt that's backed off, just a quarter turn. Not enough to fail completely, but enough to create slack in the system." He grunted with effort. "Your computers can't see it because technically everything's connected, but the slack creates a delay, makes the turret hesitate." Collins leaned in. "Why didn't the torque sensors catch it?" "Because it's still within spec. Barely. It's not loose enough to fail the automated checks, but it's loose enough to feel wrong." Robert's arm moved, the wrench turning. There was a metallic click from deep inside the turret assembly. "Standard tools can't reach this angle," he continued. "That's why I made this." He pulled the wrench out, held it up. "Built it in Kuwait. Had the same problem on my tank. Couldn't reach the bolt with regular tools, so I made one that could." He stood up slowly, wiped his hands on a red shop rag from his back pocket. "Try it now." General Harrison nodded to the operator. "Traverse left." The command was given. The APU whined to life again, and the turret moved. Smooth, silent, perfect. No groan, no hesitation, no stutter. 70 tons of steel and weapons swinging with the deadly grace it was designed for. The massive gun tracking left with precision that would have made the manufacturer proud. Traverse right. Same result. Flawless movement. The turret completed a full 360-degree rotation. Not a single hiccup. The ghost was gone. A stunned silence filled the hangar. Then someone started clapping. Master Sergeant Collins. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire engineering team was applauding. 3 days. Dozens of specialists. Hundreds of man-hours. Millions of dollars in diagnostic equipment. And an old man with a homemade wrench had fixed it in 10 minutes. Robert packed his tool carefully back into the canvas roll. He didn't showboat. Didn't gloat. Just quietly prepared to leave. General Harrison walked over, extended his hand. "Thank you, Gunner." Robert shook. "Just glad I could help, sir. Send me a bill for your time." Robert smiled slightly. "No charge, General. Coffee's on you next time." Harrison laughed, a genuine sound that broke some of the tension. He turned to face Captain Hayes, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the concrete floor. "Captain, my office. 1 hour." "Yes, sir." As Robert gathered his bag, several of the younger engineers approached, tentative, respectful now. "Sir," one of them, a young specialist with grease on his hands. Could you show us how you knew where to look?" Robert glanced at General Harrison, who nodded. "Sure," Robert said. He set his bag down again. "Gather round." For the next 20 minutes, he talked, explained the mechanical system, showed them the signs he'd been listening for, the subtle sounds that indicated stress points. He didn't talk down to them, didn't make them feel stupid, just shared what he knew. The computers are good, he said. Don't get me wrong. They'll catch 99% of problems, but that last 1%, that's where experience comes in, where you have to use your hands and your ears. He held up the modified wrench, and sometimes you need tools that the manual doesn't cover. The real world doesn't always match the textbook. So you would. The young corporal raised his hand. Where can we learn this stuff? Robert smiled. Same place I did. By doing it. By making mistakes. By listening to old guys who've been there. He looked at the group of young faces, all of them paying attention now, eager to learn. Keep your minds open, he said. Technology is great, but don't let it replace common sense. And don't ever dismiss someone just because they don't look like what you expect an expert to look like. That last part he said while looking directly at Captain Hayes. 1 hour later, Captain Derek Hayes stood at attention in General Harrison's office. The wood-paneled room felt suffocating. Harrison sat behind his desk, not yelling. That would have been easier. Instead, he spoke quietly, with the controlled disappointment of a commander who'd expected better. Do you understand what you did today, Captain? Yes, sir. I disrespected a veteran and failed to recognize his qualifications. No. Harrison's voice was sharp. That's what you did on the surface. What you actually did was demonstrate a fundamental failure of leadership. He leaned forward. You made assumptions. You judged a man by his appearance and dismissed his value without even asking questions. That's not just disrespectful, Captain. It's dangerous. Hayes kept his eyes forward, but he felt the weight of every word. I'm not going to end your career, Harrison continued, but I am going to fix it. Effective immediately. You're removed from the maintenance division. You'll spend the next 90 days working with our retired veteran liaisons, learning from men like Robert Morgan. Yes, sir. You're going to VFW halls, American Legion posts. You're going to sit with old tank crews and mechanics, and you're going to listen. Actually listen. Not wait for your turn to talk. Not think about how your computer is smarter. Listen. Harrison pulled out a folder. I'm also instituting a new training requirement for all junior officers in this division. Veteran mentorship rotations. You'll be the first. Yes, sir. And Captain? Harrison's tone softened slightly. This isn't punishment, it's education. You're a smart officer. You have potential, but you need perspective. These men you'll be learning from, they fought in wars where technology failed, where the manual was wrong, where survival meant improvising. He stood, dismissed. Hayes saluted, turned to leave. Captain, Robert Morgan didn't embarrass you today. You embarrassed yourself. He gave you a chance to recover, to learn. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. Flag out front. Parking lot half full. Inside, the walls were covered with old photos. Men in uniforms from different eras. Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. He found Robert Morgan in a back room, working on a disassembled small engine with 3 other veterans, all of them in their 70s or 80s. Robert looked up, saw him, nodded. Captain, Mr. Morgan. Hayes felt awkward in civilian clothes, jeans and a polo shirt. I wanted to apologize, properly, for how I treated you. Robert wiped his hands on a rag, studied Hayes for a moment. You learn anything these past few weeks? Yes, sir. A lot. Good. Robert gestured to an empty chair. Pull up a seat. We're rebuilding a carburetor from a 68 Segi. You ever work on carburetors? No, sir. Can't fix a tank if you don't understand how combustion engines work. Hayes sat down, ready to be a student again. Over the following weeks, Hayes showed up every Tuesday and Thursday evening at the American Legion post. He learned more in those sessions than he had in any classroom. The veterans taught him about engines, about hydraulics, about electrical systems. But more importantly, they taught him how to think. See this? Robert held up a corroded bolt. Your computer would tell you to replace it. And 99 times, that's right. But this one time, the corrosion is actually sealing a micro crack. Replace it, and you'll have a leak. He showed Hayes how to read the signs, the discoloration patterns, the wear marks, the things that sensors couldn't detect. Another veteran, a former helicopter mechanic named Bill, Taught him about listening. Every machine has a voice, Bill explained. They were working on a lawnmower engine. When it's running right, it hums. When something's wrong, it talks to you. You just have to learn its language. He started the engine. Let it run. Hear that tick? That's valve clearance. Needs adjustment. Your ear can catch that faster than any diagnostic tool. Hayes found himself actually enjoying the work. The hands-on problem solving. The mentorship. One evening, Robert asked him a question. Why'd you dismiss me so fast that day? Hayes thought about it. Honest, because you didn't fit my mental model of what an expert looks like. I expected someone younger, in a uniform or at least a technician's coveralls, with modern tools. And what did you learn? That I was an idiot. Robert smiled. You weren't an idiot. You were inexperienced. There's a difference. Idiots don't learn. He set down his wrench. The military is changing. Getting more technical. More digital. That's good. We need that. But we can't lose the foundation. The basics. The hands-on knowledge. How do we balance it? Hayes asked. By doing what you're doing now. By respecting both. By understanding that an algorithm can process data faster than any human. But a human can see context that no algorithm can understand. He pointed at the engine they were working on. This motor is 50 years old. There's no computer diagnostic for it. No sensor suite. But we can still fix it. Because we understand how it works. Fundamentally. And that applies to modern equipment. Everything is built on fundamentals. Doesn't matter if it's a Model T or an Abrams. Engines need fuel, air and spark. Hydraulics need pressure and flow. If you understand the basics, you can adapt to anything. Hayes nodded. It was starting to make sense. The mistake you made, Robert continued, wasn't technical. It was human. You forgot that people have value beyond what you can see on the surface. That's a leadership lesson, not an engineering one. I won't forget it again. Good. Because the soldiers under your command deserve better. They deserve an officer who sees them, really sees them, not just their rank or their job, but who they are and what they bring to the table. It was a lesson Hayes would carry for the rest of his career. 3 months after the incident, the American Legion Post hosted a recognition ceremony. Nothing fancy, just veterans and a few active duty soldiers. General Harrison attended. So did Master Sergeant Collins and several engineers from the maintenance division. Captain Hayes was there too, in uniform this time. He'd specifically requested to speak. When his turn came, he walked to the small podium at the front of the room. 3 months ago, I made one of the biggest mistakes of my career, he began. I disrespected a man who deserved my respect. I dismissed expertise, because it didn't come in the package I expected. He looked directly at Robert. Master Gunner Morgan, I owe you an apology, not just for that day, but for the arrogance I displayed. For thinking my education made me smarter than your experience. The room was quiet. People listening. You could have made me look like a fool. You could have embarrassed me in front of my team. Instead, you fixed the problem. Taught my soldier. And when I came to apologize, you let me learn from you. He paused. That's the mark of a true professional. And a good man. Robert nodded from his seat. Acknowledgement without needing the spotlight. I've spent the last 3 months learning from veteran men who fought in wars I've only read about, who solved problems I can't imagine, and I've learned something important. Hayes looked around the room. Technology is a tool, a powerful one, but it's not a replacement for knowledge, for experience, for the wisdom that comes from actually doing the work. He held up a small wooden plaque. The General has authorized a new program, the Veteran Technical Advisor Initiative. We're bringing retired specialists back to work with active duty units, not as supervisors, as mentors. General Harrison stood. We're starting with maintenance divisions, but the goal is to expand it across all technical fields. We have an incredible resource in our veteran community, men and women who've forgotten more than most of us will ever learn. It's time we tapped into the applause filled the room. After the ceremony, Hayes approached Robert, shook his hand. Thank you, Gunner, for everything. You did the work, Captain. I just pointed you in the right direction. Still, I won't forget it. Robert smiled. Just pass it on. When you're the old guy someday, and some young hotshot dismisses you, remember how it felt, and teach them better. I will. They stood there for a moment. Not as captain and civilian, not as young and old, just as two men who understood each other. The motor pool has a Humvee with a weird transmission issue, Hayes said. Completely stumped us. You free next Tuesday? Robert laughed. I'll bring my tools. 2 years later, the Veteran Technical Advisor Initiative had expanded to 12 military bases. Retired specialists worked alongside active duty soldiers, bridging the gap between old school knowledge and new technology. The program's success was undeniable. Repair times improved. Costs went down. More importantly, young soldiers learned skills that no classroom could teach. Robert Morgan became the unofficial face of the program, not because he sought attention, but because his story resonated. He spent 2 days a week at the base, teaching, mentoring, fixing impossible problems. Captain Hayes, now promoted to major, ran the program for the division. He'd become its biggest advocate. People ask me what changed, he told a group of new officers during an orientation briefing. They want to know if I suddenly became a better engineer. I didn't. What changed was my perspective. He clicked to a slide showing Robert working with young soldiers. I learned that expertise doesn't have an expiration date, that the best solutions often come from experience, not algorithms, and that respecting people, really respecting them, means listening before judging. The officers listened. Most of them were young, fresh from technical school. You're going to meet veterans who seem outdated, who use old tools, who don't understand your software, and you're going to be tempted to dismiss them. He paused. Don't. Because those men and women have solved real-world problems under conditions you can't imagine. They've kept equipment running in sandstorms, mud, and combat. They've improvised solutions when the manual was wrong. He clicked to another slide. The ugly modified wrench. This tool doesn't exist in any supply catalog. It was built in a war zone out of necessity, and it still works better for certain jobs than anything modern manufacturers produce. He looked at the young officers. Your job isn't to choose between old and new. It's to integrate both. To use technology where it's superior, and to use experience where computers fall short. After the briefing, Hayes drove to the American Legion post. Tuesday evening. Regular schedule. Robert was there, along with Bill, the helicopter mechanic, and 3 other veterans. They were working on a diesel generator that the base had given up on. Hey, Major, Robert called out. Come look at this. Fuel injection pump is shot. But Bill figured out a temporary fix using parts from a lawnmower. Hayes walked over, genuinely interested. They spent the next 2 hours rebuilding the pump, improvising, problem solving, teaching. This was the real legacy. Not formal programs or official initiatives, but knowledge passing from one generation to the next. A young soldier who'd been dismissed learning from an old veteran who'd been disrespected, and then both of them teaching the next group. The cycle continuing. The lessons preserved, because the best technology in the world couldn't replace the human element. The intuition, the creativity, the experience. Robert tightened a final bolt, started the generator. It hummed to life. Perfect. He smiled. Still got it. Hayes laughed. Never doubted it, gun. And in that small back room of a veterans hall, the true work of military excellence continued. Not with fanfare or recognition, but with wrenches, wisdom, and respect.